Quantum healing, the future of medicine.
Here we are at episode number 7, and this is going to be about learning some emotional 911 techniques. These are techniques that can be used to help us in emergencies. It has just pained me so much to be watching all these calamities throughout the planet at this moment of time and the people that get affected with this. And this is often situations where you can't get to the hospitals in time, or sometimes they too are destroyed. Paramedics is not working right away. You know, there are areas getting completely devastated, but with survivors. So I really had a great need to, at this moment of time, share some of these techniques that can be so incredibly helpful in these periods of time when you've got no help is arriving. You're on your own for a while, and that is clear to you. Or you have got to a place of safety, but there's so much panic and chaos and fear and all these awful anger, sorrow, awful negative emotional responses going on that isn't really that helpful. You know, it's something we go through a trauma, and these are things we experience. And yes, I have learned that over time, even with what I've discovered, and we'll talk about that next, is at this point I can reverse post-traumatic stress disorder, but this is, you know, years down the road. We're talking about you're at ground zero, it's happened, you're running for safety, or you're arrived at a safe place, or you're not in a safe place at all. Some people on the planet stay very calm during these events. It is something natural for them. I think it's a lot of past life training. But you'll see these occasional people, but that's not the norm by any means. I have seen these people in action. These are people that will go rescue someone, will jump in the freezing river to get the dog drowning. These are people that have no fear of their emotions, because when we start to go into fight or flight, which is caused by any trauma, you have some choices in that, but training also certainly helps in that, because you can fight. People that don't have that much fear will fight through it, or you can flee. Fight or flight. Flight being fleeing, running from it in fear, just trying to get away from it, or completely freeze. Now, people that have been in traumatic experiences, and I would say that just about all of us at this point, in some way or another, we've experienced some traumatic experience, and hopefully not as huge or as extreme as some things can be experienced, and they light it, but it makes no difference. Trauma is trauma, and there is a reaction. And with the reaction we need during trauma is to keep our bodies as balanced and as stable as possible for our own survival. There are people that will die from shock. When you have traumas, and they're pretty extreme, or if there's a lot of excess bleeding or whatever, people will go in shock. And shock is one of the first things that the paramedics will address as well, because if they even have to get you to the hospital, shock is not going to be very helpful. This is really messing your blood pressure up, and they need to get your body more stable that it can survive, and that then it can survive. So the very first thing is when you're around, and by the way, you can teach these techniques to children. Do not underestimate these techniques. They seem simplistic, but everything in the quantum is simplistic. Complications come later as you're trying to perfect these things. They become more difficult. But at the beginning, these are techniques that anyone can apply to themselves. They can apply it to somebody else. You can teach it to your children. They can apply it, the older children, to the younger children. These are some things that will be very, very helpful in getting people, helping them step out of trauma. Now, one of the things I had learned, I had been a volunteer for a while for a group. Not all states have this organization, unfortunately, because I think it's an excellent one, called the Trauma Intervention Program. So people that are in states that are aware of this program, or paramedics and police that are aware of this program, will definitely nod their heads and say, yeah, that's a fantastic program. It was a program designed actually by a psychologist. So this is number one, really. They had found that people that have been through a trauma and been left alone do not do very well down the road as far as the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder, which will quite quickly kick in after a trauma. It sort of embeds himself in about 2-3 months. You're definitely feeling the effects, but actually it's immediate. And in a subsequent episode, we're going to go over the different stages on how a trauma goes into post-traumatic stress disorder, the different elements that it slowly goes through and reaches now a disorder, and then how it's actually reversed and how that is done. But it can be reversed, so please take hope. It is not prevalent out in the world right now because most of the systems that are operational right now, being, body-mind, basically, do not understand the quantum very well. They don't apply the quantum. They don't study the quantum. They've sort of subtracted themselves completely from the quantum almost. And so just symptomatic treating. When it comes to trauma, that is never, ever going to work. You can't operate it out. You can't pill it out. You can't talk it out. It has to be gotten out, and the only way it can be gotten out, because the place where it's damaged, where the damage has been done, is in the quantum. It is in that soul energy that we have, causes blockages in there that have to be removed. And once those are removed, you're permanently free of all these traumas.